subject of today's presentation is Mordheim in 20 years. To me, the really interesting question, and what I try to answer in the next hour or so, is the why does a game that's 20 years old, that has no active support, it's a miniature game that nobody's making new miniatures for, in a world that it has been destroyed in the time continuum by one of my characters at least. It's the why do people do something like this? So hopefully the volume is manageable. Let's see. Not too loud, not too strong. So, the question I will try to answer is, it's the not that one, luckily. What is it about a 20-year-old is the miniature game that for should be dead, is the why does it inspire people to do stuff like that? And I could have picked any number of videos. It's there are still battle reports every week, there is new terrain being built, new rules, competitions, the tournaments being run all over the world. So, in order to understand this, we have to go into the beginning. And I am going to refer here to the Frank Herbert. In June, he starts that the beginning is the time for taking the most delicate care that balances are correct. Now, we didn't take particular care of keeping any balances correct when we made Mordheim, because at that point, the design studio was at the stage that we were making a lot of games. We were doing the small box games, big box games. It's the support for those. We were supporting multiple systems, so we were firing on all cylinders. So I'd like to think we were lucky, but I'd like to think also that there is an old agenda, that the harder you train or harder you work, the luckier you get. So let's go back to the year 1998. So I was working as the head of the Warhammer games development at the design studio, directly under Rick Priestley, the original creator of Warhammer and 40k. And the one of the butts of the jokes at the design studio at that point was the year 2k paranoia. There was a huge number of people, some say as high as 20% of the world population, who were absolutely certain the world was going to end in year 2000. The Aztec calendar was running out of years. No, it wasn't, but who cares about that? There was going to be the Y2K bug. All the computers would turn every single machine into Skynet, that they would kill us. Didn't happen, but lots and lots of people were convinced about it, and the British press, being what it is, was blasting these news out on all cylinders. And we were laughing ourselves dead at the design studio. And then we thought that what if it was real? I mean, we can't make it happen in our world, more's the pity, but we can make it happen in the Warhammer world. Now, at that point, we had no wish to destroy the actual Warhammer world, but then we looked at what was the year 2000 like in the history of the Warhammer world, and we noticed that this was the time of the three emperors, that the empire was breaking apart, and then we discovered something that's called the localized apocalypse. It's a principle where you can have the end of the world, but instead of destroying the entire world, you pick a location where you drop something equivalent of a atomic bomb, in our case a twin-tailed comet, and everything just clicked. We were tapping into a frenzy that was happening in the real world that was tied to year 2000. We picked the same date in the Warhammer calendar, and it all tied well because we had been looking for a skirmish system for Warhammer world for ages now because of the very great success of Necromunda. We wanted to recreate it. And even more importantly, since at that point, starting Warhammer Fantasy Battle was incredibly expensive thing to do. It's we wanted the game that you could purchase, whole set, needing nothing else to begin gaming, and a very small and cheap set of miniatures that would get you into the Warhammer world, into the Warhammer rules family. And this was it. So there were some limitations. Like I said, this was always meant to be an entrance to the Warhammer 5th edition. So I had some freedom writing the rules, but I could not directly contradict or the overrule the 5th edition rules. We tried that with the original Inquisitor, and the problem there was that the core Warhammer fans didn't really want to play it because they didn't want to learn a new core set of rules. And the new players, did not have anybody to lure them in. So we lost on both ends. So instead we decided this is going to be based on the 5th edition Warhammer Fantasy Battle rules. Hence a lot of the things like the stat line I kept the same. We also wanted to bring Necromunda players in, so we did not want to make a system that would radically change absolutely everything compared to Necromunda, because Necromunda at that point was easily our most successful skirmish game ever. And the end result are the Mordheim rules. So there was a philosophy. We followed throughout the book, and I am referring here to the rules, to the miniatures, to the art, and to the way that it was rolled out. We went back to the grimdark low fantasy. Those who remember 5th edition, we went with very light, a very humorous, a very slapstick, tongue-in-the-cheek kind of version of the Warhammer world with very bright colors, with using a almost cartoony presentation of chaos to give it wider appeal. The problem there was that it actually didn't have wider appeal, and it didn't work so well with the core fans. So we went back to grimdark. We went back mainly to human warbands, because Warhammer world traditionally was a low fantasy world. We wanted to make the magic dangerous and rare, and we wanted even the supernatural elements to be almost believable. Now there was a lot of the whining that I didn't put skeletons into the undead warband, but if you look at the makeup, we have zombies. Hey, the popular culture made them almost real. Like, zombies is something everybody accepts that exists. We had dregs. Hey, they are just the miserable human beings. We had a necromancer, another human, a cultist. You can kind of believe that. Vampire, okay, but in essence, he's a man. He's just a very strong one and hard to damage. And so on. And we had ghouls, which again are on the edge of believability. And this ran through whole Mordheim, and that's why it's not filled with dragons, why finding magic items is so damn difficult. We wanted to bring back the original feel of the game, and very importantly, we started to develop it with the community right from the day one, which at that point was extremely rare. Now, you saw this probably as if you've been with us from the beginning. But in order for us to get to this point, that we were able to present this gaming table and the rules and the everything, there was a long journey. So it all started with the warbands. So they had to be thematically correct, and that was everything. Low magic, high grade. Each faction had to have a reason to be in Mordheim. For example, there's been a great number of great fan-made warbands, like, say, Dwarves or now Gunnery School. But my first question for the core warbands was, why are they there? It's lots of people love elves, but the elves would just take one look at the Mordheim and go, human city, they hate us. There's a huge big rock that the causes mutation and death if I'm close to it, and it's filled with brim with people who want to kill us. Yeah, it's you keep that. We give it away. And the things like making armor and black powder weapons expensive. That was a thematic choice. I took a lot of flack for that. I accept that, but there is a reason why I did it, because I wanted you to feel like you were actually a warband leader in Mordheim. Now, those of you who know a little bit about history, does anybody have an idea how many euros in today's money a full plate mail armor would cost if you were a knight at that point? There is a bit of variety. Anybody have a guess? Yep, please.
6,500.
from, yep.
100,000?
Pretty good, but we're going to need to go higher. About €1 million, it's in today's money. Of course, we can't compare money directly to Middle Ages, but we're talking about something that's like a sports car. So that's the reason why the armor is expensive, because it's not just the armor save it gives you, it's the status that, look, I am doing so well in this place that I can afford this. It's and that was the thinking. For somebody who is trying to win a tournament, I would say that don't buy armor, but somebody who wants to rub in the face of other warbands how much better they are doing than them is to buy armor, because it's that's the ultimate insult to everybody else. But I still did not want to just do a Necromunda version of Warhammer. I added a lot of risk-reward gameplay. So diving charges, jumps, climbing, falling down when you are fighting on the ledges. I incorporated all that. There is Gary Gygax, the creator of D&D, had a great saying, which I don't necessarily agree on a pure role-playing game, or at least 100%, but is very good for Mordheim. Let the dice tell the story. So Mordheim is all about taking risks. You can't play the game without taking any risks. Versus the rewards, so you can have spectacular successes and just terrifying failures. That's why the critical system is there. I also went back to the very beginning of the wargaming. So I'm going to do a tiny little bit of very boring history. Our hobby started with the Spartans. They had and the Athenians, they had games that were equivalent to the Olympics in importance, where you played a miniature war game, because they needed the best possible strategos, generals, to lead their armies. So they created a war game to test the people and learn them how to control troops in battle, and they attach a very high honor to it. And it went there for Romans, there to Byzantines, there to Germans and the Russians, and for Kriegspiel, it's eventually into chainmail, and the most importantly, H.G. Wells, the famous sci-fi writer, created Little Wars, the first miniature war game that we might recognize as a miniature war game. And he was all about that they show the effects of the battle on the toy soldiers, or tin soldiers as they were at that point. So in his game, if you shot cannon, it was actually a working cannon, you knocked them over, you showed wounded soldiers by tipping them over. I really disliked the trend at that point that was in the gaming, to have a lot of tokens all around the table. There was so many. You need to be a chameleon, like you try to track that. There's a billion tokens of different colors on the different stages and dice with different numbers. That's why the knockdown stun rules in Mordheim are the way they are. I tried to do as much as possible that you could look at the table, just look at how the miniatures are, and you could tell instantly the situation in the battlefield. Vertical gameplay was important, and this is actually why we decided to go with a comet for the localized apocalypse. Because imagine if you want to play a skirmish miniature game, and imagine a fantasy town or woods. Now, there is one problem, especially with buildings. It's the worst possible gaming piece for playing a miniature war game, because it's closed. Even if you have rules for people being inside, you have to do that on paper, you have to remember things, you don't see them. It really is the worst possible thing. But what if I take the city and I drop a meteorite on it, and I level everything so all the buildings are open, I make it chaos so they stay upright even though they should collapse, and we get all this verticality in the gameplay. And that really worked. I also, I love Necromunda. I hated the first edition's post-battle sequence, which should have been exciting, but it was so much work because everybody was what is equivalent in Mordheim, a hero. There was a lot of the rolling involved in the looking for things and so on and so forth. I tried to streamline that as much as possible. So the heroes have their own track, which is the more complex one. Henchmen are much faster, but there's always a chance for promotion, which makes them still exciting, that they might reach the highest heights. I combined the exploration and the earning in a single dice roll, and I gave you, instead of giving you a further rolls, I gave you ability to modify that dice roll, so you could weigh in, do I want to make more money, or do I want to find rare items or encounter different things? And then as your warband gains power, you'll be able to modify the dice more and more, you have more and more heroes, and then that will allow you to penetrate ever deeper into the city. It's probably the thing about the game mechanics-wise, I like the most. I always try to reduce everything. Orson Welles wrote 6 rules of writing, which you also should study. And they are just a couple off the top of my head, that if you can take away a word, always take away a word. If there is a scientific jargon or foreign word, replace it with a common English word. If you can make a active form instead of passive, always use active, and so on and so forth. With the last rule being that break all these rules rather than write something outright barbarous. It's a great set of rules, and more rules players should follow. Rules writers should follow it, because nowadays I love the new monster manual in D&D, but I hate the fact that before I had 6 monsters in every page. Now it's 6 pages to get 1 monster. I'm just, give me my stats. I don't want a page to all through this. There is a way, I believe, to write good rules, and they still have the flavor, and not to have to write pages and pages of flavor text. We also did absolutely tons of Easter eggs. There is a references to Spider-Man. If you've seen the rope and boots of Peter, who is the Master Thief known as Spider, whose ability then allows him to crawl on walls. Now that is obviously on purpose. There is the nod to Highlander, with Kurgan being mentioned actually in 2 places. There is Batman reference. One of the zombies is actually the undead Batman. Somehow Bruce Wayne ended up there. And there is also tons of inside jabs and barbs to each other at the design studio. So I put insults about the production stuff into my text, and then they change stuff on the borders to get back to me. Nobody else will ever know about them. And then we put fish everywhere. Now this is something I always get asked about. So apart from, I believe that every game should have a visual icon that it owns, that everybody can remember. Mordheim definitely is the fish, but it's also because the idea on the high-level concept of Mordheim was that it was a battle for the human souls. And if you remember, the original symbol of Christianity wasn't the cross, not at all. It was the fish, because Jesus referred himself as the fisherman of souls. It's Now, I do not mean that the Mordheim is a religious work. It isn't, but it's still the symbolism is there. Now, there was also a very important to understand, this is where the time comes in, that this is 1999, 1998 in UK. So, the rest of the world had internet. UK doesn't. The rest of the world, it's communicates and does stuff digitally. UK doesn't. The rest of the world, it's wants to be able to order things from the internet. In UK, everything is mail order. Everything is in phone. The central tenet was at the GW at that time that the internet is a fad, like a hula hoops. It's gonna fall off. And our strength is that we talk to people on the phones and we form personal relationships. And I don't want to, some of my best friends were at the mail order. I do not want to look down on them. Quite frankly, they did awesome work. But that's just not how it was going to go, I thought. So I started the first online playtest group for the games. Traditionally, GW always wanted to keep all the rules writing and playtesting internal to the house for many reasons, not least that if you start doing it in the UK, then the people will come to the studio and knock on your door and demand to hassle you all the time, and we needed peace to work. Now, what is great about starting an internet playtest group for the first time in GW was that I could tap all this potential. Here is a couple of handsome Finnish playtesters of Mordheim from 20 years ago. It's that if I didn't like what they were saying, I could just say thank you and either ignore them, or if they had something useful, I would absorb it. Now, Rick Priestley, one of the first things he talked to me about games design is this. He said, Tuomas, whenever somebody comes up with an idea, don't ignore it. If it's a good one, say thank you, absorb it, and then tell everybody else that you came up with it. So this is very, very important. He also believed that the main point of making games is that you can put rude jokes in it that nobody will not notice. Like the stories that because the Americans complained about Warhammer, it's the English paraphrase when you make an enemy to have to retreat is that you beat them off. The meaning in American English is quite different. So the Americans complained to us at the head office that hey, why you're using this beat off term, that please change it. What happened is that Rick then went back to the American rulebook and changed all the possible instances about retreating to beating off everywhere. And only for the American version. This is from the man who came up with all the games you've been playing for the last, how many years you've been in the hobby. Next, I want to talk about the Mordheim art, which I don't think you can talk about Mordheim and not talk about Mordheim art, because I think it is at least as integral as the rules and the miniatures and the setting itself. Now, even today, it's the John Blanche and rest of the GW artists refer to this as the Mordheim factor. And this was really, even in GW, the final hurrah of the artisan illustrator. We made sure everything was handmade. Now, at that point, we were already doing the layouts of the books on computer, but you'll notice if you look at the Mordheim rulebook that everywhere here and there, one letter is off or one line is slightly off. We were actually doing this by hand on computer, trying to imitate, because in the past, when Rick was making original Realm of Chaos, he had to lay down and paste all the lines of text. And we wanted to bring that back. Obviously, we couldn't do it that way because our bloody printers only work with the computer files now. So we faked it. We did all the borders by hand. We did all our painting stuff. We did not allow Photoshop. Before that, we've already started using Photoshop all over the place. For Mordheim, we took that all off. And it was very rare that the GW traditionally at that point had a lot of very famous illustrators and artists, and they all had their own styles. And for this one time, the decision was that they would come together and create one style under John's leadership. But still everybody contributing. And I think that one of the reasons why Mordheim's been so incredibly long-lasting game is that the art style has stood the test of time. A lot of books we look from the past, we go, that's a little bit dated. Or you have a lot of nostalgia for the original, say, D&D book illustrations. By the way, the entire illustration budget for all the AD&D first edition was $100 for everything, including covers. So no wonder they are not necessarily the ones that later on Larry Elmore and the Caldwell did. It's with proper budget. We have a lot of affinity to them, but they are not the nicest art. Mordheim's has managed to be in a place where people still really like the art, even through all this time. And that's, I think, part of it, that the people picking the book up today, they think it's quality artwork and that they enjoy it even today. And that's very hard. And that's not something you can plan ahead. You just don't know what the future is like. So a lot of you are probably familiar with the final art style, but we ended up doing something that's a very different if you look at the 5th edition art, which is all jokes and colors and exaggerated cartoon looks, which depressingly, since they copied everything from us, was now copying from Blizzard. So we went to the opposite direction for Mordheim. And that was partly because of where we took our inspiration. A lot of people, if I ask where do you reckon that the Mordheim art came from, a lot of you would say that the Bosch and Dürer, they are obvious. Like the painting of the 4 Riders of the Apocalypse I have here, that's the original from John. You can see that it pays homage to the Dürer's classic piece. But we also had some Van Gogh, because we were looking to, can we have a different way of seeing the world? And of course, the Blake and for example, all his great work on the Great Red Dragon. It's it being related to Hannibal Lecter is purely coincidental. But there was also something happening behind the scenes. It's because the production also got gripped by the Mordheim bug. And there was something happening that none of the fans knew. Like you see when you buy a gaming product. It's like a beautiful swan. On the top of the water there glides this elegant bird, but underneath there are 2 ugly, stubby, very uneven, gangly feet furiously paddling that you don't see. And at that point, we've just purchased our plastic injection company, very, very, very unfortunately named KKK, which we changed as soon as we bought it. it came from the founders, and they were like completely oblivious. But they're a great plastic injection mold company. So we started doing miniatures in a completely new way. The Mordheim sprues, especially the mercenaries, were the first test, which we actually had to succeed in, or there would be no game. So the Perry twins had to sculpt the miniatures 3 times their normal size and mirrored. Now this obviously in the age of computer is no longer a problem, but they had to do it this by hand. But this again shows you what kind of talent the Perry twins have. It's some of you might know that the Michael, for example, lost his right arm, his dominant arm, in a terrible accident in reenactment. But I was there as he was doing these, learning with his left hand, because he really lost his right hand, remember, in a couple of weeks. It's the doing all this, learning this completely new technique that nobody's done, and still getting ahead of his schedule with his non-dominant arm. That's how talented the Perry twins are. There is a story that they never confirmed to me, but I can believe that as they were taken to hospital, remember they are identical twins, and they were both injured by the blast, but obviously only Michael lost his hand. So what happened was that when they knew that the new doctor was coming in, Michael and Alan would swap beds, and when they came to Michael's room, Michael would go, there would be Alan there, and he would go, "Look, it's grown back. It's a miracle." But there was other things we were trying to do with the box as well. We wanted to bring the price down without taking really anything out of the box. So those of you who actually have the original box can see that even compared to our normal time, how tightly we packed all the cardboard into it. Like the frames, there is very little extra, because we, in order to hit our break-even point and lower the price of the box, we had to do a lot of clever things. We needed to save every penny. There is a very complex math that even though the contents of the box cost relatively little, once you add all the taxes and everything else and shipping and manufacturing and so on and so forth, it's actually box set is a real tight balancing act. GW obviously makes its money out of miniatures, not the box sets, but even so, we could not make a product that's meant to make loss. GW wasn't as big as that at that point. And we wanted to actually increase the value to the players. It's because we had a feedback from the Necromunda and others, and we felt that we need to put more stuff into it. Now, let's talk a little bit then, looking forward. That's what's happened. It's been 20 years, and the game, for against all odds, has flourished. But I think there are good reasons for that. Like those of you who followed the Town Crier, I wrote several articles on it, but over 90% of it was done by fans. Again, the later on for Fanatic was quite common, but at that point at GW, that was revolutionary, because we did everything internally, and now we were giving the fans the chance to do official GW product. But the flip side of that was that it created a fan base that was actually wanted to do everything themselves, that wasn't relying on the design studio to spoon feed them. Possibly not the best possible financial decision, but it's certainly from the point of view of having a game that keeps on going on and on, that was a very good decision. It also was the first of its kind in what I call the Ruined City genre. Now, both in the miniature tabletop gaming and digital games, computer games, the console, mobile games, there are actually quite a few games now that in the fantasy genre that use ruined cities. But as far as I know, Mordheim was the first, and several of the game designers of those games have contacted me later on and told that that's where they got the idea. I even got a person who was doing a Stalingrad game about the fighting the Russians against the Germans, and said that he got inspired by Mordheim. I said, but the real battle was that it was a ruined city. you sort of had this extra the length, but then again, a lot of people, me included, got our interest in history from our fantasy gaming and not the vice versa. So I got interested in the Holy Roman Empire because of Warhammer, because the Empire is, of course, a directly related to the Holy Roman Empire for a very good story reasons, which I can go to if I'll do Q&A after this. I'm happy to answer that question if somebody's interested. And Frostgrave is obviously, it's the on the miniature space, is probably the most famous follower of Mordheim. But to me, that's not the most interesting thing. To me, it's more most interesting and important to me personally is what people do. I have in most cons I go to, somebody comes and lifts their shirt and shows their Mordheim tattoos. And that's something for a designer that's quite humbling, that you would actually, it's the do that. Like, it's something you read about, but when it happens to you, it's sort of very disarming. It's that somebody cares about what you did with your team 20 years ago so much that they're going to take a tattoo today, especially something like that that's going to have to hurt a lot. That's a big one. Or there's this group in France who have this Mordheim table, which is still way above anything we did at the studio, and we had a really nice Mordheim tables. It's and they've been working on it for 12 years, and that's incredible to me. And then just a couple of weeks ago, it's we held a very small selected group held a Mordheim 2019 event. So even John Blanche came to Finland. Would you believe? It's and all his disciples. He now runs the new miniatures group at GW to play Mordheim, create new conversions, new art. It's the new miniatures. I have some of the John's miniatures that he converted and painted for this event here. And this is, remember, John suffered 2 heart attacks. He has to take 6 different medicines. His liver is falling. He's not at his best health. He's still as productive as ever, but for him to make that trip, that is something. It's not something he would do for nothing. It was great to see him. I mean, we haven't seen him in 20 years. But I also think that there is a beyond just the game itself. For example, a lot of female gamers have come to me and said that their intro into the fantasy gaming was the Sisters of Sigmar. Now, at the time when I created them, a lot of people have asked me that were you trying to lure in female players? No, I mean, I knew the data at that point. Our fan base at the GW at that point was 99.98% male. So, but I just had an idea of the story and a drama, and how I could separate the Church of Sigmar against itself. That's why there are the witch hunters who are also Templars of Sigmar, and the Sisters of Sigmar, and then I get the groups of entire regiments of the women who dress up and as the sisters and go and play larks and hit people with hammers, and then they come to tell me that this was like they're into it. That's very humbling. And this is from today. It's the Mordheim table took the prize for the best in show. It's as a introductory gaming table. Again, 20 years later. It's that's really why I do this job. I mean, of course, I have to put food on the table, but this is something that stays with you. And I also think this is the reason, if your game can do this, then the chances are it will live for 20 years. Of course, most of the games don't. Almost all games, they are released, some people buy them, they play them, they forget them and put them away. For some reason, people keep coming back in Mordheim, but there is more. This is from the Mordheim 2019 weekend. It's there is, for example, this whole board was in a box that you could open, and it opened up as a playable board. Just absolutely incredible. Just that how he figured to how that's done. Alex, what's his name? It's
Nicholas Grillen.
Yes, it's the GW. It's in the John's group. Like, just imagine trying to come up with that. The board works and it doesn't break every time you open it. Just incredible work. I hardly recommend that you check the Mordheim 2019 on Instagram, especially. There are some incredible terrain, warbands, art, figures. There is even like the 4 Riders of Apocalypse from the painting that was inspired by Drura. Somebody did the exact representations on 3D on them. Just incredible stuff. And the interesting thing is that as I look at the data, because I obviously from my own fan page and talking to the people who run the websites, it's the Mordheim is going now stronger than it's ever been possibly after the first release. Part of this is that the PC game was a hit. It had, last time I checked, 400,000 copies sold, and that's without the console. So we are talking about a significant number of players, especially for such a hardcore game. The mobile game is proven very popular, going strong. New players are coming in, and a lot of those players are then, because they start looking at it, they find out that there was originally a tabletop game, and then they come to the tabletop game. There is also the next generation. A lot of the people, they now have children. Their kids want to play with their parents. They got Mordheim and they start playing it. And from the Eastern Europe, a lot of people have started doing the Warhammer LARPs. And because especially it's popular with females, a lot of the females, if they look at the option, do I want to be a witch elf and run around in bikini? No, hey, I can be a kick-ass Sigmarite warrior priestess that has a armor and can be tough and kick-ass and not feel that is pandering. Oh, there's this game. Why wouldn't I play that? So we got all these people coming in, and the Reddit is going strong. The Facebook forum is gaining all the time momentum. Forums are going strong. There's videos on the YouTube all the time, and this is with no official support. So that is quite unusual for any game. And I've done a lot of games, and I do mean a lot of games. I'm really, 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 really old. So let's talk about a few. One more thing. I promised that that I would leave some secrets, and I've kept one for 20 years. And only the people who attended the 2019 weekend. The original story was that the comet actually was twin-tailed for a good reason. Shadow Lord did come with it, which everybody figured out from the rulebook, but there was something else there. There was the Child of Light. There was the Savior, a Redeemer, who would come. The second coming of Sigmar came down with the comet as well. So it offered the Warhammer world both the promise of renewal and the salvation and destruction. And the Child of Light actually descended upon the rock where the sisters are. And that's why the rock was saved, because the Child of Light picked the rock and picked the sisters who were the true inheritors of Sigmar's Sigmar's will on Earth, not the official Church of Sigmar that the witch hunters represent. It's who were misguided. So the sisters were. It was always the final secret. We're right after all. They were on the right, and the rest of the Church of Sigmar and all of the Empire and all the claimants to the throne were wrong. And I had a long storyline on this, of course. GW, once I've left, they made the Shadow Lord Belacor and used him to destroy the Warhammer world with Archaean, who is another character I created. So I said that fine, if it has to be someone, at least I can take credit. Remember what Rick said about taking credit? Very important. It's but this was there is another fine, Sister of Sigmar Lover, and the Belacor, it's who eventually is what the Shadow Lord came to, and this was the final act would have been the fight between the Shadow Lord and the Child of Light. It's and this is something I've kept in wraps for the last 20 years. So again, it's not how the official history went, but you can take it as a interesting curio with you. It's on the what could have been, and the what I never put in the books that I intended to release later on. So we had 45 minutes for this, I believe. So I am more than happy to take questions afterwards, but that concludes my presentation. Thank you very much. And please feel free to ask questions. It doesn't have to be Mordheim. There's always somebody asking something about the Goblin Fanatics or some sort of I'll answer those questions as well. Yes, please, sir.
So next weekend, GW is releasing this game called Wargaming. So
yep.
How do you feel about it, and how do you feel it will compare with Mordheim going forward?
I think it's going to be very much like Kill Team, and I think it harkens back a lot at the original Realm of Chaos Warband rules, which was Chaos fighting Chaos. I think it's great. I think that the cadence and the sort of the look and feel of that kind of game is by default very different from Mordheim. It's obviously the setting is different. You obviously have bad guys mainly fighting bad guys that they may extend later on. But I do feel that the Age of Sigmar's fiction is so far removed from the very grounded the original Warhammer world rooted on the 15th century Holy Roman Empire. That I don't think it's how would I say it's I don't think it's new Mordheim. I think it's the new Realm of Chaos. Hey, I wrote a version of Realm of Chaos, so I think it's great. It's and I think it's going to be very close to Kill Team. That's what I would do because Kill Team's been a tremendous success for GW. Just tremendous. Yes, there was a gentleman here that was next. Yes.
Okay. Because Mordheim has this new appeal, there's a video game and a strong support from the fans. So why doesn't GW support officially Mordheim?
Well, okay, I can only speculate. I don't work for GW anymore, and things have changed a lot. I do talk to my friends. Anything that they say would be confidential. I would not reveal. Jervis, John are some of my best friends. I would never betray them. But I will say this much, that first of all, even at the time when I was there and we tried to support a lot of games at the same time, and we had a lineup of game designers. There was me, Andy, Jervis, Gab, Ian, the Nigel Stillman, Rick. That was a formidable, the number of people. We still struggled badly. It's as you've seen, that even though GW is quite a bigger company now, they are trying to stagger the releases so they wouldn't have to support too many games at the same time. Other problem is that they still have physical stores, and there is a grim reality in the far future of the darkness. It's that you have only so much shelf space, and you can only sell stuff that has a good profit margin. And new games, of course, always get a boost when they come out. But if you try to launch 6 games at a time, you lose that initial boost. But I would say this much, and this is a guess. This is not knowledge. Don't read anything. Usually, when there is an audience and a demand, it will be matched with the product eventually. I mean, GW is not stupid. They will know the checks that the Mordheim games are writing them from the digital space, just like with Total War Warhammer. It's and they will eventually. It's the thing about it. There is of course a lot of Mordheim fans within the studio. It's so I do not think it is impossible. I do think they might do something. They might license it out to somebody else, unlikely since they like to keep their miniatures. But like with Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay, who knows? It's but there is usually a good reason why GW doesn't support everything at once. And for sure, games that I loved but nobody bought, like Man of War, that's a lot harder to see another edition. Because like I said, most games people just forget them and never see it again. Yes.
If you did Mordheim now, is there something like that you would something significant you would do differently, or that you would add to it?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, 20 years is a long time. I would go for the alternating activation. I would go with action points. So you can choose that. Do I run twice, or shoot twice, or fight in melee twice, or move and shoot, or move and fight in melee? It's I would do a more modern, and I would streamline more. I might add into some things. It's and of course, if my hands were not tied by any current edition of Warhammer, I might look at the rules on a more holistic manner. But 20 years is a long time. A lot of water has flown under the bridge, and the wargaming has gone forward. Now, Mordheim is a traditional system, because it's 20 years old. And I do think that is part of the charm. But if I was doing a game today and I tried to sell as many copies as possible, which is my job as a game designer, those are the kind of things I would look. Yes, sir.
Sort of related to the previous question, you mentioned that Mordheim sort of started a new genre of games. Do you feel that has someone done it better?
Well, I'm probably the most biased possible person. As a rule set, yes.
It's 20 years now.
Yes. As a rule set, yes. As a complete package of terrain, innovation you've never seen, the art, the scenery, and the rules and the fiction. I don't think that if you look at this like a stat sheet of a character, I don't think anybody's done a ruined fantasy skirmish game as well. That is a very small niche, of course, but I don't think there is anything that can beat Mordheim on every area. And I think in most areas Mordheim will beat them. But I'm the most biased person in the whole world to answer that question. Yes, sir.
Do you still play miniature games, and what games are you playing?
So I do pick up, when I go to abroad in cons, I will take my Witch Hunters and play a game because people want to. I played Kings of War because Alessio is an old friend. It's obviously I taught him game design. We've been fast friends. And I like to see what he's doing. Rick is my mentor, so Gates of Antartes. I played that. It's giving him some feedback. Rick is just as good as ever. It's almost shame that 40K exists, which is also a game he made, because Gates of Antartes is a fantastic sci-fi miniature war game, but it's very difficult. Gaming is very much winner takes all business. If you are number one, you have almost all things, and then if you're number two, you have almost nothing, and that's the way it is. And 40K is a tremendously powerful beast to knock from its forge. But that's a couple of examples. I really do want to. I tried on a couple of games of Kill Team. I want to play more. I think it's a great game. There was somebody in the back. Yes, please.
So, if you ever have any idea of ideal campaign length, because in many of these 90s games you could have a runaway leader, and if you play for dozens of games, it goes quite ridiculous. And
Yes.
I have been playing Carnaway, which is another city game, and in that one you might have exactly 5-game campaign.
Yeah. Now this is actually really interesting. What I did not get into the book on time, which is probably my biggest Mordheim regret, is my campaign rules. So how I run the Dark Moon campaign at the GW studio was that the people could, if they were in the campaign, they could play as much and little as they wanted during the week. Every week I would publish the town prior, and it had rules like the Juggler King is visiting, so anybody who does a diving charge will get a 1 XP point. So people started doing diving charges and dying in throws. Hugely amazing. And then there was always a story game at the end of each week that was open to as many people as wanted to do it. And I had a branching story that could lead, and there were the numerous victory conditions, one for each of the factions that were playing. So the 3 Clemenants of the Throne, Blood One Castine, and everybody else, the Sisters, the Possessed. And every game would move you on this the map one pip in a different direction and determine what the next scenario was. And then it would all lead into final scenario. So after, I think it was 6 weeks that I played, on the 6th week, there was the final battle, and if the faction on that's reached its own final mission was going to won the campaign. It was minor victory for them, but everybody else had the last chance to have them have a minor victory instead of a major victory. So for example, if the Possessed were winning, did the Shadow Lord break his chains and escape and gather enough power, or did Blood One Castine get enough of the Weirdstone to make the Great Spell of Doom and unleash all the undead? It's to start the Vampire Wars. And there was then the possibility for everybody else to stop them. So you try to move it towards the ending, or at least one closest to what you want, because we also had a scale. Like if the right one's victory condition was here, the Sisters was right next to it. So the Sisters would have a minor victory if the right one won. So there was a system for you to keep playing, and which did not lock you into it. But even if you were really weak in the final match, you wanted to take part because you might be able to snatch a victory from the jaws of defeat. So, and I wanted to put those rules in, but I just did not have them in a shape that I was comfortable publishing them. So that was what I wanted the campaigns to be. So maybe one day, if I have a month free time, I'll write and finish those for the fans. Yes, there were more hands. I saw them. Yeah, please.
What's your favorite warband and your least favorite warband? And if you could do any changes to them, what would that be?
Okay, you mean from the original book?
You can include any.
Oh, I think that there's been so many. Like there is literally on Ropecon, I've lost the count. I think some of them are very non-Mordheimi. It's I think it's called Warband, but Gunnery for the School of Nuln doesn't really fit the setting very well. But the Shadow Warriors are too powerful. There is a reason, other reason than story reason why I didn't do elves, because initiative and ballistic skill rule Mordheim, and elves are for once. They are the best at everything that matters. It's I just don't think that there is any way to, if the other player wants to play nasty, to beat them. If I would change something, I made the Skaven a bit too powerful. Like the slings the problem was that nobody at the studio was jammy enough to have a just slinger everywhere. So I would have made some simple, sane choices there. The Skaven have a ton of weaknesses, and people consistently forget about psychology. Like the Skaven leadership maximum is 7, and it's never going to be better than that, and you're screwed against fear-causing creatures. And a lot of people forget that, but even so, they were just a little bit too far. Because Witch Hunters were my own warband. I was paralyzed about making them too powerful. Because for the rest of the studio, and there was 100 of them, would have been really upset with me because I would have made my own warband. So those are the two. That's what I would change, and that's the one that I think was the least successful, because it's just else don't, as an entire warband with no limitations, don't fit Mordheim very well. They're too good. Yes, one more.
Speaking of elves, there's an elf NPC in the game.
Yeah.
Painter.
Yes.
What's his backstory?
Oh, he was from a Warhammer Fantasy roleplay campaign I played. It's one of my friends played a high elf, Einor. It's who happened to be a swordsman. And since again, like Rick said, you should take everybody else's ideas and nick them and claim you came up with them yourself. Einor is one of those things. He was a elf in a long-running Warhammer Fantasy roleplay campaign here in Finland. That's his background. In the fiction, I kept it pretty straightforward. I thought he was one of the Order of Swordmasters, the captain before Hallar became captain later on, who just saw that he needs to go and sort out this Shadow Lord person. So we don't get any the unsettling business later on in World 2. Was his backstory in my mind. But a lot of stuff in Mordheim I did not explain in great detail. Like if you look at the Bertha Bestraufung, I hint at her past. It's that she remembers with great displeasure, but I don't tell what it is, because I think having some mystery is part of the charm of Mordheim. If everything is explained and laid out, it's a bit like if you go to a first date and your date partner, whatever the gender or sexuality, starts with opening his or her bathrobe. It kind of takes any anticipation or surprise out of it. It's not very, very subtle. Yes, please.
Why was Mordheim chosen to be the city to be destroyed?
Sorry?
Why was Mordheim chosen to be the city to be destroyed by the comet?
So why it was chosen, it's still in the background story, it's because it really was the Hammer of Divine Wrath. It's the Sigmar destroyed the city in order to show that he was displeased with his people who were fighting amongst each other. He had one rule when he left the realm of chaos to become god, was to keep the empire together, because it's the only bulwark against chaos. Do not fight against each other. What do they do when I leave? Okay. Yeah. That's it. But a lot of it got to do with at that point Warhammer also suffered a lot from because it was in some ways generic fantasy, orcs, goblins, elves, dwarves. It's we wanted to start creating iconography and the recognizable visual signs like 40k had. It's so that we wanted to bring back the Hammer of Sigmar, the twin-tailed comet, the warrior priests shaving their heads, the ogres having a single braid, like all these things that the other stories and systems and the games and the backgrounds did not have. So part of it was that we chose a very dramatic piece rather than an orc invasion, was to have something memorable, like if you see a picture of twin-tailed comet now, and if you played Mordheim, you'll immediately make the connection. It's it's creating the symbolism, like say Christianity or Judaism or Islam. It's that you make the exact connection. We had a lot of, because Middle Age art was all religious art, and the John Blanche is hugely influenced by the art from Middle Ages. So a lot of the iconography draws from that. So that's why you're seeing me making so many references to religion, because that's all the art there was in Middle Ages. You were burned as heretic if you tried to do something else. An occupational hazard if you're an artist. Okay. Yes, more. Yes, please, sir.
Is there a story behind the name?
Mordheim. Yes, the city of death. Now, lots of people think that the Reichsspiel in the Empire is German. It isn't. In the Warhammer cosmology, the old slang, where once their gates, they knew they were going to fail, they made immense number of copies of worlds that all resemble Earth, geographically, people-wise, languages, because they were trying to come up with a world that would produce through evolution the champion that would counter chaos. So that's why Warhammer World and in 40k World, everything is the same. It's you see the repetition of the same things. It's because Slan were doing these little tweaks on planets, making them copies of each other, then tweaking them and hoping, please give us the avatar that will destroy chaos. So, but Reichsspiel is not German, so it would be in German, it would be Mordheim, the city of death. It's Mordheim, but Mordheim in English sounds stupid, so we didn't go with that. And all the German studio was upset with us, and then repeated the same thing and make sure that they had to use Mordheim, but then they changed it back behind his back. So. I was highly obviously Germans can't stand anything being wrong. Okay. It's a very useful trait, especially if you want to do something like engineering. Very efficient. Any more? Yes, please.
Do you have any particular opinion on some of the modified rule sets that are out there?
I always encourage it. I think that why I am always careful when I did FAQs. I always said, this is the rule, I'm taking it straight from rule book for a very simple reason. That if you go to tournament or into a new pub, and then people will start beating you because they have a different rule set, that's not very fair. This was doubly true at UK at that point because there was no internet. Nobody could say, Google it or go to this webpage and go, huh? So we had to go by the book. It's so, sorry, I lost it. Can you repeat the question? I had a point.
No, if you had particular opinions on some of the more recent...
Yes, it's some of the things, yeah, I think that the Mordheim misses the point. I think it's fine system, but the trying to play a perfectly balanced Mordheim is kind of not the point. It's just like in Blood Bowl, there are halflings. We play Bretonians in Mordheim. Okay, I'm a cavalry force. So I am going to go into a ruined city to fight in a skirmish fight with people who are supposed to fight on open fields with lances. Yeah, you're gonna lose. You should lose. And that I think is completely fine. It's the people often confuse a highly competitive gaming with with a games that have story-driven elements. And Mordheim wasn't really written as a tournament game. I did that with the Warhammer 6th edition because tournament scene was getting so strong. So I spent a lot of time when I wrote those rules, especially since I did the Ravening Hordes. I did that one go. I did all the armies in one go, so I could balance them. For once, I see them all at once. And that's why a lot of people who play competitively like playing 6th edition with the Ravening Hordes, because that's what it was made for. But Mordheim isn't like that. You've been trying to get your turn, so...
I got a question of Archeon.
Yes.
The Archeon has where's the armor of Mordecai?
Yes.
Please tell a reference to Hero Quest. This Hero Quest, the old Milton Bradley GW game, has the bad evil overlord was Morgar in there.
Yeah. I mean, like all the naming stuff, because we needed names all the time at GW, especially at the point when we were creating new characters all the time. So we had huge lists. And I believe you are right. I would have to check with Jervis because I stole that probably from Bill King, another good friend of mine, who wrote the first Champion of Chaos, and I took his name, and of course he was the first ever chosen before there was ever chosen, and I believe he took it from there. I do believe you are right, but I would have to double check with Bill because I stole it from the name from him. I didn't came up with that name myself. A lot of games. The Archeon was originally called Archeus. But then there was this damn French circus that's called Archeus, and they couldn't use it. They were going to sue us. It's probably for the paper there. Archeus is a bit too much again in your face. So a little bit of subtleties. Right. We are almost out of time, possibly over it. But yes, there is time for.
So if somebody wanted to start to play Mordheim now, after 20 years and didn't know really anything about the game, where would you direct a brand new gamer?
To the nearest gaming group. There is a lot of active, that's the best way to do it. It's I would ask them to contact the local wargaming group the chances are, it seems nowadays, somebody is playing Mordheim and you get them to play with them. I think that's by far the best. I mean, all the rules you can find on the net. There are great. If you were trying to start on your own gaming group, I'd get them to look at the Throwback Thursdays gaming on YouTube. They do Mordheim every week, and those battle reports are, I think, excellent way of seeing the game on action and playing and seeing them. They make mistakes too, but then they correct themselves, which I think is great for the learning. That would be my next best bet. The videos are wonderful. I do all my tutorials and videos if I could. It's expensive to do. Well, if people want to, there's a few minutes. If you want to have a look at the art and the John's miniatures, I'd like to free you now. If you want to take photos, if you have books to sign, please take your opportunity now before we are out.